Welcome to the Wingman Show. My name is Commander Drew Brown, and we're floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you badass jet pilots, rumble. My wingman, my fellow jet pilot, my main man is Dr. Paul Thompson. What's up, brother Paul?
Oh, not much. I'm glad to see you. Glad to be here. I think we're going to have a good show. It's a very good day. It's always a good day, but it's going to be a good day today, especially.
It's always a good day when I'm talking with you, my brother. Always, because you always look after my six, and that's what this show's all about, being a wingman. Well, we got a wingman today, Jack. You know, Daddy trained Muhammad Ali, who always said, I am the greatest. I am the greatest. Well, we got a wingman today that was dubbed the greatest athlete of the century, believe it or not, over 100 years ago. So I think this wingman's going to be the bomb. I'll tell you that right now. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to us. And if you would, write us a little review on Apple Podcasts, follow us on Instagram, subscribe to us on YouTube, hit that little subscribe button. You don't have to smash it like Dr. Paul says, but just press it real soft. If you would do that, we'd appreciate it. Also, our newsletter comes out at wingmenshow.com. That's wingmenshow.com. And we have something called the Flow Line for frequent flyers. Our frequent flyers are the people that listen to us all the time. All you frequent flyers out there, why don't you write us a letter and maybe ask us a question or a problem that you have? Dr. Paul and I will try to answer it. Well, Dr. Paul, are you ready to get this bad boy going?
I'm ready if you are.
All right. You know, we're sponsored by Magic Mind. And that's a wonderful drink that Paul and I take every morning, and it helps us with our productivity, less stress, produce more, and we really like Magic Mind. You can get that Magic Mind at magicmind.co. That's magicmind.co, and for 40% off, all you got to do is put in the code WINGMAN. Put in the code WINGMAN, and you'll get 40% off. All right, Dr. Paul, you ready for this first one?
I'm ready. Let's go.
You remember when we were flying in the Med and we used to go after Russian ships, and anybody that looked kind of funny, they would send us to go do recce on, which would be recon, and we would take pictures and flybys and do all that?
Yes, I did that a number of times.
Yes, we did it all the time. Matter of fact, it was very boring, actually.
Yeah,
but guess what just happened?
What?
2 Russian Su-27s just downed one of our drones. I think it's a Q-7. The Q-7 drone was just hit by one of these Su-27 fighters. And when we saw the video, I don't know why they did this, but they said they dumped gas on the drone first. So we watched them dump gas on this drone. And the second time this jet made a pass, this fool can't fly, and he hit the drone. It had nothing to do with him doing it on purpose. It was a pure accident done by a pilot who can't fly very well.
Yeah, that was definitely an oops. It's interesting. I was impressed by the clarity of the video that they released, because the drone's probably got cameras all over the place. But the dumping of the fuel, I guess they've got 2 fuel nozzles. It actually looked very pretty. Obviously, it was a very nice day, but probably not the best way to do an intercept. I don't know what speed they were flying, but the drone was probably not flying very fast. So he's got a kind of a trigonometry problem and a relative motion problem. I think he just came by too quickly.
How fast do those drones fly? How fast do they fly?
I've seen some of them. I think they range from somewhere like 120 knots to over 300, depending on the type.
So I don't mean to interrupt, but I do. Please explain to these people how hard it is to fly a badass jet at 120 miles an hour.
Well, that
which is almost below landing speed.
Yeah, depending on your configuration, that might be around stall speed. So you may not be able to fly that slow, unless you put the gear down, the flaps, and all that other stuff. If you're zooming by, but typically the way you do if you're going to do an intercept, that's not the way you do it. You use 2 airplanes approach. They go behind the target. One goes off to the left. It moves forward to be in line with the pilot or the captain or whatever. The other one stays in the back in case something bad happens and you shoot you down. Mm-hmm. This one, he just did he was rolling on a target, came close, and just misjudged his position. Although, but the strange thing about it, I'm doing some reading and assuming it's true that the two pilots are actually going to get a state award from Russia. Now, you thought they were going to be shipped off to Siberia.
Hell yeah.
I said, no, they're supposed to get an award.
Well, you remember, Doc, when we saw the video, the first pass, he came by, and I guess he didn't hit the drone with the fuel. And so when he did it the second time, he tried to get closer, and he hit the damn drone. And then I heard that the Su-27, the Russian jet, had a hard time landing, but it did land. So it damaged them. And remember, we were talking about before we saw the video, we were saying, maybe he hit it on purpose. Hell no, you don't hit another airplane on purpose, right, ever.
Except for the one case in the movie Air Force One with Harrison Ford. They were attacking Air Force One, and there's an F-15. He said, well, they're shooting a missile at it. And he said, I got it. And he put his F-15 in front of the missile that, he blew up, and Harrison Ford did not, which is pretty interesting if you could put yourself in front of a missile going Mach 2.5. But it's a good movie. I like the movie. Other than that, I agree with you.
Another thing is, did you notice in this, and we don't talk much about politics here, but China and Russia have both provoked us in the past month or so with a couple of air incidences. Is this something that we need to be aware of?
Well, yeah, I guess with a balloon and a drone, that's interesting. It's aviation related in ways I wouldn't have assumed. But the drones are capable, because first of all, this happened in the Black Sea, supposedly in international airspace, and they were saying that, well, the drone was getting close to Russian airspace, and therefore we came to get it before it penetrated.
Right, but tell me what is dumping gas on this stupid thing? What would that prove? Who came up with that one?
I was about to ask you that question. I've never heard of that before. That's interesting. Dumping gas and then hitting it on purpose. That's unique. I've never heard of dumping. I never thought about that. Dumping gas other than to get to landing weight in an emergency.
Well, that's what I was going to just say. We used to dump gas all the time. And sometimes, believe it or not, I don't know if your squadron did this, but sometimes we had to go up there and just dump gas so we would get our allotted of fuel for the next quarter. So if we didn't use all the fuel, they would give us less.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't.
Never heard of that?
No, I never heard that. And sometimes if you didn't use all your bombs. Yeah, it's funny. It's the way the government works. If you don't use all the money that's allotted to you, the thought is that, well, you really don't need that much anyway, so there'll be a reduction.
100%. And that's happened to me a couple of times, or to our squadron.
Right.
All right, next one. You and I love sports. We both played basketball. We're both Knicks fans, and we both watch ESPN. But have you noticed the ESPN looks a little different now? I swear to God, it looks like Caesar's Sportsbook. Everything is gambling. There's a big, now the picture is not as big anymore because it's bordered by all the odds of everything, from your mother going to the bathroom to will the Giants win the Super Bowl next year.
Right.
Everything is gambling. And Pete Rose, one of the greatest baseball players of all time, won't ever be put in the Hall of Fame because of gambling.
Yeah, that was 1989. And the strange thing, he was a tremendous athlete, tremendous ball player. But the strange thing, I guess the irony, is that, in the state of Ohio, when the state of Ohio authorized sports betting, Pete Rose was the first one to actually place a bet. They let him place the first bet in the state. It's a picture of, But for people that don't know, Pete Rose is a very famous baseball player, played for the Cincinnati Reds.
Always got hits.
Yeah, always got hits. Very, very, very tough guy. And for a while, he was the manager of the Reds. He's a player and a manager. And during that time, at some point, he was actually betting on his team. I don't know to win or lose, but he was betting on his team. It was discovered, I guess, sometime later. And because this was a clear violation of a lot of norms, he was essentially banned from baseball, for life. But people still talk about him, just like people talk about Mike Tyson. Yeah, there's some guys who've been caught actually gambling, and there's some football players now that have some of that same problem.
Well, an Atlanta Falcon just got suspended for a year because he was gambling on his phone on other teams.
Yes, right.
Now you can actually gamble, Dr. Paul. I mean, believe it or not, gambling is an addiction, just like drugs and alcohol and anything else that you can be addicted to. But you can now actually gamble while the game is being played.
Right.
I mean, they're so up to it, like who will score more at the half? Well, what's his name have more rebounds than the other guy? I mean, during the game, you can still continue to bet. And what I was going to tell you, and what the difference is watching the Knicks play and gambling on the Knicks are two different experiences. One, I'm excited, I'm up, I'm down, I'm up. The next one, it's like a life event. You know, now you got money on it. And now if the guy misses the free throw, you lose $100 or whatever. It's really crazy. Addictive gambling. And I'm glad I don't have that problem at this moment.
Yeah, I'm not interested in that at all. But you see DraftKings all over the place. I mean, they got commercials and everybody knows draft. You can do it online. I mean, everything's online. Do it on your phone. Do it
right on your phone.
Yeah.
And they even offer like 10 times the amount of the bet for your first bet. So they entice you. But remember what we said about Vegas, casinos don't get smaller.
That's right. That's right. They don't lose.
All right. How about this young lady? I do yoga. Katrina and I do yoga, and we do it with the Peloton app. So we follow a yoga instructor. We go with Chelsea or Kara. And we just found out that there's a 7-year-old girl in India named Pravanya Gupta who has become an official yoga instructor. That means she went through all the regimens, which is not easy at all to become an official yoga instructor, and especially in India. What do you think about this girl doing yoga or teaching yoga at 7 years old? Because, the show has been specializing on these young kids doing amazing things. Well, here's another one doing amazing things. We're trying to bring good news, not all the bullshit that happens all the time.
Yeah, I was looking at a video of her, and she talks it's a very, very chipper accent. And she's 7 years old. She's the world's youngest. And she says she started when she was 3.5 years old with her mother. So she's been in study for 3.5 years, leading adults and memorizing all of these things, which are pretty extensive. I was obviously flexible, but to be able to remember all that stuff and do it with such precision, and she does it effortlessly, is sincerely amazing. There are a lot of young people with a lot of talents, and we don't highlight that much. We highlight many of the bad things, the dramatic, horrible things you see on video and hear. But there are always people out there doing well who are behind the scenes. And those out there who want to aspire to do something better, or for your children or your grandchildren, direct them into things that are constructive, not just things that are flashy and pretty. Things that require thought and work will inspire happiness. A lot of people running around.
Dr. Paul, please don't curse.
Okay.
You said hard work.
Hard work every one time. Some
people don't want to hear those two words together.
That's true. You need to toughen up. You need to work. You can actually overwork, but a lot of people don't work at all. So you need to find the middle ground. My thought to myself is work at least as hard as you complain, or try to work harder than you complain. Easier to say than to do, but that's what we should aspire to, in my opinion.
That's no doubt about that. We talk about college all the time. We talk about education, actually, is what we talk about, because education is necessary, but knowledge is mandatory. It's not just going to college, it's learning something and using it. But talking about colleges, why is Harvard better than Yale? Why is University of Carolina better than Southern University in New Orleans? Why are these colleges ranked this way they are? And a lot of people think it's just because of pure education. Well, that's not necessarily true. The reason colleges are big or small or have a good reputation is because of the type of people that go there. So if you go to Harvard, it's very, very likely that your roommate will be the CEO of some major corporation in 20 years. When if you go to a smaller school, they might be CEO of a McDonald's in 20 years. So it has to do with the type of people that go to these schools. But no matter what school you go to, as long as you graduate, you're a college graduate, and that puts you in the next category. And then it's dependent upon you, what you do with that education. But don't always think that the bigger, fancier named schools give you a better education, because that's not true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes the rankings, it depends on who's doing the rankings too. You see these things like on U.S. News and World Report or some other magazine, they'll put out their annual top 10 colleges or top 50 colleges. Sometimes they'll look at things like, academics is a part of it, the faculty a part of it, graduation rates can figure in, affordability, social stuff, living conditions. I've seen U.S. News and World Report. It's not all just, X's and O's or, whoever does the greatest academically. It's a lot of other things, living on campus, social life. Some schools are known as party schools.
Well, that's what I was just going to tell you. Both of my kids got basketball scholarships to the University of Texas. Go Longhorns. And I just love Texas for that reason. But back when they were going to school, I think it was voted one of the top 10 party schools in the country.
Okay, well, if the partiers can graduate, fine. But if you can't graduate, and I've known people like that, you just wasted a lot of everything.
Yeah, I have a best friend that when I went to high school, when we started high school, he was a senior, and when I graduated, he still was a senior. So You got to still work when you get to school, but. Now let's talk about these colleges. It's very expensive to go to college, Dr. Paul, and sometimes people just can't afford it, or they come from a disadvantaged background and they just can't go to college. And isn't that terrible? Or can I tell you about this young lady in Atlanta who just got $1.3 million worth of scholarships and was accepted to 50 universities. 50 colleges and universities, a Black girl from Atlanta who just worked harder. And when they asked her, how were you able to do this? She said, instead of going out and having fun all the time, I would stay home and study so I could have fun later in life. This girl's name is Dyer Brown, 18 years old, from Atlanta, Georgia. And she's a Brown, so I guess she must be a cousin of mine. We have a lot of Browns, don't we, Dr. Paul?
Yes.
Well, what about this $1.3 million worth of scholarships she was able to get, but nobody else can get, obviously, right?
Well, it's interesting. You said, she worked hard so she could relax later in life. Sounds like she talked to my Dr. Lewis a long time ago. He said, all these extracurricular activities, put that down. The parties will be there when you finish. Now, he said that more than 50 years ago, but someone obviously said that to her, or she picked it up herself. And that's true.
Well, when I was speaking, I would tell kids, hey, you can slide right now and work for the rest of your life, or you can work right now and slide for the rest of your life. The choice is yours.
Right. Well, good on her.
Well, good. Now it's time for a wingman PSA. From the 11 facts in life, fact number 6, anger. Anger equals fear. Fear of losing something or not getting something you want. Stress is the number one killer in America. And the best thing I can tell you is when you're mad, sit down, shut up, and do nothing for 24 hours. Sit down, shut up, and do nothing for 24 hours. It will be different 24 hours from now. This has been a Wingman PSA.
That's a good PSA. That's a good PSA because you're talking about emotional maturity.
Well, isn't it funny when you're angry? Really, it comes down to not getting what you want or losing what you have.
Right. And you may be wrong. That thing you didn't get might be good, might have saved your life, or
100%. 100%. Well, we got that wingmanshow.com website, and you can write there ask questions. And we got a couple of letters this week, and we got one from Meredith. She's a 52-year-old woman from Fairfax, Virginia. Now she wants to talk about aging parents and taking care of her parents and how it's affecting her life and her social life, that she never thought that she would have to do this. Well, Dr. Paul and I both have experience in this. Actually, Katrina's mom is getting older now, and we're starting to have to look after her. But Paul, you've been through this. You want to maybe give us a little bit of advice on aging parents and how to deal with it?
Yeah, during the last few years of my mother's life, she actually lived with us and was totally mobile, very, very, totally mobile, could do a lot of things. We took her around to do a number of things she didn't want for anything really. But for an older child, it's kind of an unusual experience. And I think a lot depends on the personality of both people, particularly of the aging parent. If it's someone that's combative and difficult, that gets probably worse as you get older. And some people, depending on their medical conditions, may require a lot of care. If they have lots of pains, that may bring out some behaviors and things said that are really, really unpleasant. I never experienced that myself, but I've seen other people that did. It's something you really don't prepare for. It's just happening, particularly later in life. I got a couple of friends, our age who are doing that very thing now with parent or parents that are both not in the best condition, that do require care. You hear about, you say you want to live to 120 or 110 or whatever it is. That's good. And there are some people that live, by themselves. I had an aunt that lived over 100. She's over 100 years old, 102. And she was by herself, except for like maybe the last 4 months of her life, which is very unusual. You're blessed, but most people are not like that. So if you've got someone else in your home or you're going over to take care of them, yeah, it's a bit of a burden, but basically, I look at it, well, it's kind of payback.
Payback. Somebody used to change your diapers.
Somebody took care of you, right? So you can't just, what's the word I'm looking for? You can't just abandon your responsibilities. You've got something to do. And I've seen some people do that too, who know better, but they didn't want to be bothered, just lazy and not doing what they should do. Take care of your parents to the extent that you can.
Yes. And one of the things that are hard that I've noticed, because I'm standing back watching, is Katrina's mom used to be different mentally. And every time she starts going further and further away from that, it disturbs Katrina even more, because she's almost like, how come you're not thinking like you used to? Well, she doesn't think like she used to anymore. And actually, the old become young again. Mm-hmm. And, they say we go from babies to grown-ups back to babies. And that happens. But I promise you this, if you take care of your parents, somebody will take care of you. This is back to what you do in life comes back to you. Everything you do comes back to you. So you need to be very careful how you treat the elderly, because hopefully, God bless, will be elderly.
That's right. Yeah, everybody, we don't stay, 17 years old forever.
In Asia, they really look up to their seniors and their older people because of experience and what you and I call time on planet. The only reason I'm as smart as I am now, it has nothing to do with anything other than really time on planet and being through these experiences more and more and more. And you learn like that.
Yes.
Well, this is something I learned right before we get to our wingman. How about this? Magic Mind. Now, anybody who wants Magic Mind, just go to magicmind.co. And if you want 40% off, you just put in the code Wingman. But Magic Mind has this stuff called lion's mane, which is a very, very hard to get mushroom. And I think it's nootropics. And what it does is helps your memory. You want to tell us a little bit about this lion mane?
Yeah, it's a mushroom, and it's known to help with basically cognitive function. If you look at some of the literature, it's not it's not a perfect thing, but it's believed to aid in your memory, recall. That's why I like the Magic Mind. It does help in that, because there are some things that slip me, or I may be feeling for a memory that's, something on the tip of my tongue and I can't quite get it. Sometimes I'll get it maybe a second later, something familiar. It's, a good part of the nootropic, which is kind of the brain health movement. But, and mushrooms are good for you in general.
Oh, yeah, I love mushrooms.
Yeah, mushrooms are good for you in general.
I love mushrooms. All right, Dr. Paul, you know what time it is? It's time. Oh, first of all, for the frequent flow line, if I didn't mention it before, just go to wingmenshow.com and write us a letter. wingmenshow.com. Write us a note, a letter. We'd be happy to read it on the air. All right, Dr. Paul, I told you about the greatest athlete named in the past 100 years. Well, King Gustav from Sweden named Jim Thorpe the greatest athlete of the century. And when you and I started to look into this, Wingman, I know you were, but I was totally blown away by the achievements of Jim Thorpe, who was a Native American, and his name was Wathauhook, meaning bright path. He was a true Native American, and he won the decathlon and the pentathlon in 1912 in the Olympics. And the King of Sweden named him the greatest athlete of the century. Later on that year, about 6 months later, after a ticket tape parade and all the accolades and everything else, they took his medals away because they said that he played amateur baseball 2 years before that or something. It was a true act of racism because he was a Native American. Jim Thorpe not only ran track and field, he played baseball, basketball, football. He was the first commissioner of the NFL. Dr. Paul's going to tell you a lot more things that I can't remember, but this man was incredible. And Ali used to say he's the greatest. Well, I'm starting to wonder now. But is the greatest athlete being able to kick somebody's ass or be able to outrun them? That's that's another question. But tell me something about this great man, Jim Thorpe. What a wingman to the Native American people.
Yeah, well, apparently he was born in Oklahoma, and he attended a number of schools. He wasn't too keen on being a student, so apparently he would run away from these schools. And they eventually sent him to an Indian school in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, which is a long way from Oklahoma. But apparently there's an Indian school in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and there he excelled in sports. He really excelled in sports. He excelled in all kinds of sports. And he was known for playing for a guy named Pop Warner, who was a football coach. Always heard of Pop Warner football.
Yes.
But he's like an offensive genius. And I guess he was considered one of the greatest football coaches of the half century or of the century. Jim Thorpe was who did he play? He played against some famous people. Didn't he play against Dwight Eisenhower?
Dwight Eisenhower.
At West Point.
Yes, he went to West Point and they beat West Point. And the president said that he made a misquote, which I didn't like, but Dwight Eisenhower said he was the greatest athlete he ever saw that didn't practice. The problem is that you and I know from experience that greatness doesn't come without practice.
Yeah, he must have practiced because, school wasn't his primary thing. Unfortunately, he died in obscurity. But the thing on Pop Warner, and I just saw this, I didn't know this. Again, there's a connection, was that Pop Warner is actually a lawyer. He was a law student. He was getting a law degree, got into football, got into coaching. I think he coached at Cornell. And then he went to this Indian school in Pennsylvania, but he actually got dismissed for profanity and complaints of abusing the students.
Oh, that's where profanity in professional football comes.
A rough guy. And then where did he go? He coached at the University of Pittsburgh for a number of years, which I didn't know.
It's your school.
Yeah. For about 8 years. And then we went somewhere else. He won a couple of national championships. But he passed away the year I was born. And Jim Thorpe passed away a year before. He died in 1953 in relative obscurity. He was broke. He was out in California. And I think he was in some movies and some little things, but essentially broke, married, and divorced. And when he died, his wife worked out a deal where she would ship his remains to a place in Pennsylvania under the condition that they named the city after him. So there is a Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. I think I've been on a bus, a Greyhound bus that stopped there once. It's like a tiny town. It may not be now. It was 50 years ago. But it's called Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Not Carlisle, Pennsylvania. It's Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. He was never in this place. He just stopped there, and they made it a town. It's called Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, and no ESPN, no sports network.
They didn't have moving pictures back then, so we really never got to see him play.
Yeah, even they didn't have radio either. There's no radio.
When he was 9 years old, his twin brother died. And not soon after that, his mother died from giving birth. He ran away from his father as a young teenager because he wasn't good in school. Finally came back to his father. But the sad part of this is that he had the disease of alcoholism also, which a lot of Native Americans, I'm sorry to say, have had that disease or have that disease. And he died broke, alone, I think just with his wife. But the worst baseball player in the major leagues makes $25 million a year. The worst.
Right.
And this guy died penniless, and yet he was named the greatest athlete ever to live in this century. Well, Dr. Paul, great wingman story, I must tell you. Great wingman story. Dr. Paul, great wingman story, I must tell you. Great wingman story. And Dr. Paul, whatever is beautiful and whatever is meaningful and whatever makes you and our listeners happy, may you guys have it now and forever. And Dr. Paul, I pray for peace.
I pray for peace. And again, we thank our listeners for listening, liking, and sharing our message. Put this out to someone that you know, or someone that would like to hear a good word every now and then.
Thank you once again, Dr. Paul Thompson, my friend. Thank you for your love, your time, and that's something that we won't ever get back. I want to thank all the listeners, too. Thank you so much for doing the show, Dr. Paul. We're jamming.
Well, thank you, Mr. Drew, for inviting me on. Always good to talk to you. And ladies and gentlemen, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast or any of the podcasts. If you're looking at YouTube, they say smash the like button. Don't smash it. Just press it gently and use as a link to all your friends. You can also look at us on our website, wingmenshow.com, WINGMEN show, SHOW.com, altogether, wingmenshow.com. And we hope to see you in the future. Thanks again, Mr. Drew.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're still floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you badass jet pilots, rumble. May there be peace on earth and goodwill towards all men and women.